to Doxxed, the podcast.
Whoop, there's the plagiarism. You, me, and Joshua David Evans accused of plagiarism in a smear campaign.
Why is it always that?
Why is it always plagiarism?
God.
Such a frustrating accusation, especially when it's just completely baseless, because you're like, no, like show me the words that I plagiarized. And no one ever does. Now you're just
No one ever does. No one ever has proof. And then you're put in a situation where you feel like you have to scramble to disprove what they're saying, which is hard to do when it's just not true. Like, why would I need to show evidence that I didn't plagiarize? It's so fucking frustrating.
Yeah, it is.
Ugh.
And it's also just like, it's very serious when you do put a lot of because again, both you and I were accused of plagiarism, you with your books and me with my academic writing and my blog. And especially when it's something like serious, like you've published a book or you want to have some kind of academic position and career, it's a big deal to be accused of plagiarism. But then you really do have to consider the source, because it's not a big deal to the people accusing you when they're just anonymous online bullshitters. Like, that's absolutely nothing, but it's a big deal when it's your career and your life, and it's like your words and what was meant to represent you.
Yeah.
It's just a huge difference between the way that people feel when they're making that accusation baselessly, because it's some, like, I don't think it sits with just like a normal person who hasn't produced a ton of writing, how big of a deal that is when you've put your heart into your writing and it's you, and it's almost like you just ripped it off and scammed someone. Like, not only is that a lie, that's just completely devastating.
Right.
Yeah, so poor Josh with his music.
But I do still to this day feel like she has control of the narrative. She has control of what happens to me. And I really don't know how to get away from it other than what I've done with my life now, which is peace out and get away from having other people be a part of my life in that way. I'm very closed off. I don't trust people. I never used to be that guy. I was always almost like the golden retriever in the room. It's always like, so everything's good. Cool. I know that you beat me yesterday, but I'm going to come love on me today. Not saying that she beat on me. I mean, there were times that she definitely smacked me around, but not like we were fighting and she smacked me. I'm not saying that.
Well, I'm going to ask, was she physically?
We would never get into an altercation where she would smack me or anything like that, but playfully, she would roughhouse with me. It was more consistent than I wanted to believe, because people were like, people screenshot and like make compilation videos, and they're like, look at all the times that she's done this. On the honeymoon, she sprayed sunscreen in his eyes, and look at this where she smacked his chest really hard, or look at this where it's very known in our relationship that I didn't want her like touching my butt all the time, especially out in public. I'm insecure. I was always uncomfortable having any attention put near there, and she would always try to like mess with me back there, and that's playful, but she also knew that it made me really uncomfortable.
Did you ever express to her?
That's also interesting, and I'm curious what you think about it, because he's describing how they never got into, I guess he says, altercations, but she would playfully hit him, and then people would even make compilations kind of showing that it happened quite a lot. And also some of it was like boundary crossing, like she's trying to touch his butt and it's making him uncomfortable. And I think that does reveal some kind of weird masked contempt. And I think if I was in a relationship like that where somebody was continually like low-key making me feel uncomfortable with the physical contact, but it was all played off as just a joke, bro, I do feel like that is some kind of, and maybe somebody doesn't notice they're doing it, but I think that betrays some kind of abusive dynamic there. What do you think?
I think it's true. I think it does point to an undercurrent of contempt. It's like pretty thinly veiled abusive behavior, because when you do call it out, when it's masked as like a playful thing, and you do call it out and say, hey, this makes me uncomfortable, or this actually hurts, they typically turn it around like, oh, you're being so sensitive, or I was just playing with you. And then you end up having to caretake for their pretty fake feelings. But really the issue is that they're just upset that you noticed, and they can't keep doing it. It's like it's another kind of power thing. They're kind of banking on the fact that you'll go along with the joke, but there is no joke. You're just abusing your partner because you can.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that you can be not aware of yourself too, and be doing that to a partner accidentally. But I also don't think that's the case in this case either.
It made you uncomfortable?
Trust me. Oh yeah, about like the butt thing. Sure, yeah.
And she would still continue to do
there's
it.
even a vlog where she does it, and then you can see that I'm not happy, and I walk
And then the butt thing is just a straight up consent thing. Like, don't touch someone's butt if it clearly makes them uncomfortable. It's not playful. Don't do that.
away, and she's still filming, and then she says, he doesn't like it when I do that, but I'm being a brat and I keep doing it. So she acknowledges.
It doesn't matter you being a man. That's not a factor. If you set a boundary about where someone can touch your body or how they can be in your personal space, I can see you just, you're crossed. Sorry. Everything is crossed on your body.
I just don't want it to, I think she's got so much on her plate. I don't want to add another thing.
Let me stop you for a second when you say that. It's not your responsibility to feel like you're adding something to someone else's plate when you're telling your story. So if this is your story, if this is your truth, you are a whole human being, just like she's a whole human being. We all are. And if these are things that you have felt and that you haven't expressed or you haven't felt like you were able to, you are entitled to.
That clip I put on my TikTok because, and we should stick it in the episode because it's so good, because SWOOP is an amazing interviewer and basically should also be a therapist. And that is such a key point. I'm so glad that she got there with this interview and just really pushed on this idea that he is protecting Colleen the whole interview, and that it's okay for him to tell his story, and it is not abusive of him to tell his story, and it is not his responsibility that it's not his responsibility to manage her emotional fallout from him just telling the truth about the experience that he had. Right. That is so important. It's so important.
But I think in him trying to protect Colleen in that way, he's also trying to protect himself, because it's so easy for people to flip the script and make it seem like he's this horrible, abusive man. So it's like, I can see where he thinks it's beneficial to him to genuinely want to protect Colleen, but also in doing that, protecting himself.
You did say something to me off camera that was interesting to me in regards to talking about these more difficult topics where we're going to talk about accountability. And you had said that this is kind of the easiest thing for you to talk about. And I'm curious why, what about this that we're going to get into is easier in your opinion?
I didn't know if I was going to talk about this, but the way you phrased the question, I'm just trying to be as transparent as I can, and the one thing popped in my head. I was for a very long time after all this happened, to the point where I had a handwritten will in my pocket for Pamela, my wife. I was very much at peace with the idea, that's a weird way to say it, that if I go, I go. The reason why I say that is because when you're there and you have given up everything that comes along with that, when you decide, no, I'm going to get up, I'm going to choose something else. When you truly make that choice, you also have to make the choice of, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to face myself. So if I'm going to face my demons, I have to face all of my demons, not just the ones I want to deal with that feel easy to deal with. I've done a lot of hard work on.
Yeah, so he's describing sadly feeling suicidal and coming past that, coming through it and realizing that he has to face his demons, and it really is an ego death. I've been there, and you can just tell from this guy and his entire demeanor and his energy, honestly. And we are about to get into this section. I'm very curious to think of what you feel about this section, because it's about him taking accountability for the things that he has done that are wrong. But energy wise, it's just so clear to me that he had some kind of massive ego death and came out of that and healed from it. And that definitely can happen when you get to that point, and it's really sad that he got there through this.
So if we need to talk about things, let's talk about them.
I think that there are a lot of people I could say thousands, hundreds of thousands who think that this is a long time coming.
Sure.
Very briefly before I do, you said one thing that I would like to ask you about. You said that you were tortured. Was that in reference to what you went through with Colleen?
Yeah. Again, I don't talk about this. I saved myself for marriage, and I gave it to her. So this wasn't just, hey, this public relationship that was benefiting you, crashed and burned. It was your whole life's goal and standards you set for yourself and gifts you thought you were saving meant nothing.
And that is really telling. He saved himself for marriage.
Such a white Christian dude just trying to be good.
And it's so interesting to me, this entire story, his entire story arc. And I mean, it's sad that it's ironic that like I do think of him as a character in this story when that's a source of a lot of his pain is being made into that, really. But a lot of his problems as a character stem from the mistakes that he's making from based on his perception of trying to be an authentically good white Christian man, like, and believing idealistically that following that path and just doing it sincerely is going to lead you right. And it's like this intense amount of hubris that he got from it, from believing that. And it's sad because it's like you can see that he meant it, but the whole path was going to be problematic.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so sad.
It is so sad because you really are set up for failure. And he saved himself from marriage. He really wanted to do it right. That's so sad. Okay.
Yeah.
All of the little justifications that I made in my head then were very much of, this is what you do. You're in this element. You're a YouTuber. This is how you connect. And I made every excuse I could to normalize things, and I would not have done if YouTube wasn't something I was pursuing. For the most part, they were always like, we know it's you. We know it's you. It was all very surface level, fun, talking about the blog, talking about content. It's weird. If you told me that scenario just removed me and put some other grown man in there, I would be like, hell no, I don't care that you asked him 1,000 times to hop on. Why is he doing that? In that time of my life, I was desperately trying to build and create a channel. I didn't do it all the time, but it was definitely part of it. And I severely wish I did not do those things.
I don't know if this is a good time to stop or not, but we're like through the first chunk of the taking accountability section. I just wonder if you have any thoughts, because this is a really intense section and SWOOP is doing such a good job. And I feel like at this point also Josh is doing a good job, and just like you have to have really dealt with some ego to even have these conversations. And then at the same time, he really did do some creepy ass shit. So I wonder what you think.
I think he's doing a great job of not being defensive and not making excuses for himself. And it seems sincere. It's also in his best interest to not do anything but take full accountability for all of his actions, because any ounce of defensiveness or anything like that would just look terrible for him, considering how intense the backlash has been for years. But I do agree that he must have done some serious, deep self-work to be able to not only have this conversation, period, but to have it published on a platform that's going to get millions upon millions of views in perpetuity for, yeah, it's just, he's doing a really good job. And I know that must have been really hard for him to be able to talk about this stuff. There's probably some shame attached to it. There probably has been some shame attached to it for a while, but it looks like he's forgiven himself and he's grown and matured, and he's a good example of what it looks like when you do the work to heal.
Yeah, I think so too at this point. And I think it is good to keep in mind that this is all with the knowledge, full knowledge that a lot of people are going to see this. It's also interesting that he gives somebody else control over it when he has his own platform. He could explain this all on. and he has to have some kind of faith and trust that it's going to be represented fairly. Yeah. All right. And then there's more of this. This is where like I watched the first hour or so of this, I think, maybe a little less than that. And it was good, but I had taken a break and then you were like, I'm sucked in. And I was like, I guess I'll get back into it. And then by like around this point in the thing, we're now in hour 2. I remember thinking, I cannot stop watching this until we're done with the 3rd hour because this is compelling as shit at this point.
Yeah, it's hard to put it down.
Yeah, because you're just dealing with like the core of someone's psyche, basically, because yeah, this is like extremely not that like this should be a normalized kind of conversation to have, but I have not really ever seen this conversation. I've never seen this. Have you?
Never.
Yeah.
The typical YouTuber apology is like, Colleen's ukulele. Like, this is taking accountability. I've never seen anything quite like this. But he's also not a big YouTuber anymore. He hasn't been in the spotlight for a long time. And so maybe that also kind of impacts the level of work you actually have to do to function in real life, not just functioning on YouTube. And it's different when you're a big YouTuber and your money comes from clicks and views and you do something stupid and the crowd expects you to take accountability, apologize, and then you put on your gray sweatshirt and your pearls and you take off your makeup and you have ChatGPT write your apology for you and you read it into the camera. That's what you're used to seeing in a YouTuber apology. So this is so different.
Different for a few reasons. I agree. All right, let's keep going.
One person was creating that show and one person was creating the bits, and you don't challenge it because she's the successful one. She's the one that rose to the top, and how dare you tell her how to do what she knows how to do best. I didn't want to ruffle her feathers about that. There was a lot of things over those years that I just stopped complaining about, just stopped making an issue about, because it never got me anywhere. It only made things more tense. And so I did the cowardly thing and just went with it. Not thinking, but what is this doing to them? And how are they perceiving that? This is like, everyone's in on it and it's going over their heads. I kept convincing myself, this goes over their head. This, like, they don't get that the cheese balls and reaching in means X, Y, and Z.
I mean, it's the age-old skit that we've, seen, those old video clips of a guy who's got candy in his pocket. There's just no world I can get to thinking that was something that an adult came up with and another adult co-signed, you co-signing, participating in it, the tour managers co-signing on it, the venue co-signing. I mean, every adult in the room.
I think it's interesting that he says that the cheese ball skit and other kind of sexual innuendo in the content, that part of how he was justifying it was to say that it was just going over the kids' heads. And SWOOP pushes back on that and it's like, well, really? Because it seems like it's a joke told by adults that's inappropriate no matter what. And at the same time, isn't that also just exactly how all of our TV growing up was? Like everything on Nickelodeon, everything on Cartoon Network, and I love those shows, but there was so much innuendo, and there still is so much innuendo in so much children's TV, where I can see how he would think that. I read myself reading the cheese ball skit, I'm like, gross, that's gross. But like, you could have the same reaction to something in like Rocko's Modern Life, or to one of those horrendous like feet scenes in a Nickelodeon so one show or something. Like there were really inappropriate things in a lot of children's TV. So I kind of get that. I kind of see it.
And that's also Colleen's excuse, and has been Colleen's excuse the whole time, for the type of humor that she markets to children. Like, she sort of hides behind this whole, my comedy is for everyone, and the things that are a little more risque, kids won't even understand. And maybe that's true for some kids, but also your content is made for kids. So why even bother having content that would go over their heads? Why would you even do that?
Yeah, and it's like and then I think she had said at some point, and the idea is it's for everyone, therefore, so the parents can also have fun. But that's not really how it works. Really, it's like these adults in power are just abusing their platforms, and it's gross. What was I gonna say too? Oh, the other thing I wanted to say was Mickey Mouse has ties to blackface minstrelsy. So you know, it runs deep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To anyone that's watching this, just like I said on Twitter, but I mean it as deeply as I can, you're not at fault. It was not your fault. You did not deserve it. You should have never been in that situation. You should have always been protected, and you should have always had people to step in and oversee and make judgment calls. And none of us did. Mm. And now there are repercussions. And my words are only words. And I know that. But I don't know how else to at least start to say, I see you. I wish I could strong arm myself back into that moment and change it. And I'm ashamed that I didn't do anything significant enough that would have resulted in them not experiencing what they're experiencing now. And then after the show, we did meet and greets, and I hung around with the parents most of the time while they were all meeting her. And we would joke with the parents, and they would joke back. And again, I'd walk away thinking, you know, there's nothing wrong. We're fine. And it's not.
Now, it was about this point that Joshua brought up someone completely on his own that I hadn't been planning on asking him about, JoJo Siwa, a former reality star made famous in her appearances on the show Dance Moms before transitioning to a career on YouTube. There's a lot of hush discussion online about JoJo Siwa's relationship with the Ballinger family. Now, JoJo has not come forward either negatively or positively about her experiences, but for context, she has been a
That's so funny. JoJo Siwa came up in this interview, and yeah, SWOOP says she has not come out negatively or positively, but oops, she then talked on an interview pretty negatively about the victims of the situation. So that's, and I haven't actually caught up.
Terrible.
Yeah. Are you caught up on that? I haven't actually caught up on like what the fallout was of that, except for obviously no JoJo. I do want to talk.
I haven't seen the fallout of it, but the timing of the interview she gave was unfortunate for the release of this. So that sucks.
They're like, if I were you, you should text her back, call her, let her know, DM her that you still want to be in her life. And I said on the phone, I said, I'm not about to try to navigate control over who she likes. It's weird, and I will not do it. And that was one of the first times that post my involvement, I got to make a decision on my own. I knew I could continue being close with JoJo, and I am not going to go down that road. So she's going to.
That's so interesting. So he says he made a conscious choice to not continue trying to make sure JoJo wasn't like taken over to the Ballinger's side, and it seems like she then was. But the other just really awful thing is that JoJo in her interview where she talks about this, is like, oh yeah, I met Colleen when I haven't watched it in the last few days, but like she was a young preteen, like almost around Adam's age at the time that they met.
Anyways, it's not something that I wanted to like just really dig into, but I just was, you know, I see this and I'm like, he's talking about accountability. Why is this still up? And then you say you don't have access to the channel. So it gives more context to the thing.
Sure.
But hopefully you've learned some things since then.
I would hope so. I would hope so, because you know, when you hear people be like, I have black friends, so I'm not racist. I roll my eyes at that. I'm aware, and even though I'm different now, yeah, it's just a stain in my life that I have to live with, regardless of how I feel now.
Okay, I definitely want to just pause after that. And I want to, because he's talking about this generic rap song and just racism in the content. And I'm very interested what you think. I also want to talk about the blackface, green face thing.
I mean, I appreciate his answer to her questions a lot more than a lot of other YouTubers that have participated in that kind of content, because it was just the time. It was just, 5 years ago, it was just different times back then. He didn't pull that bullshit, which was nice. But she makes a great point that no matter who else was doing it, no matter what the time was, it was always racist and it was always hurtful. And I'm so happy she called that out. And I hope he really let that sink in.
Yeah, I really love her response in that exchange. They are sitting in that discomfort, and I think it is a really good point, because it is easy to feel like, okay, it's normalized and justified, or something is, because it was in a lot of TV, because he's totally right that like SNL would absolutely do a sketch like that. But, who even is an SNL person? Dear God. Who are the Lonely Island? Like Lonely Island is not going to sit down with Swoop and talk about their racism or something.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Yeah. So again, like I've never seen, like this is kind of like, you want just more representation of people actually talking like this, but you don't see it. But I wanted to also just mention the blackface, greenface thing, because when that was going down, I was commenting on it, and it bothered me so much because it got used as like a scandal of people going too PC with the whole thing and trying to over police her act, and how it was actually greenface from an Elphaba skit or something, from a Wicked skit. But no, like the whole thing is how the character is oblivious. And even without seeing the show beginning to end, I have to guess she's not a stupid person. She knew that there was paint on her face. She's aware of blackface because it's all over her act.
Right.
So I cannot even abide this idea that it was like an accidental blackface, or not even an accident, but that it was just a green face instead from Alpha. But like, if it was green face, it was a play on the idea that the character doesn't understand, which was intentional. So that always has annoyed me, because then it got like used as like oh, everyone's going too far with the accusations, and I don't think so even.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Hi, I am Johnny Silvestri.
On June 7th, 2023.
Sorry, that was a Johnny Silvestri jump scare. It's like a changing scene, and then just like the jack-o'-lantern face.
Oh my God.
Okay.
A man named Jonathan Silvestri took to Twitter to accuse Josh of harming him. As the Clean Ballinger story blew up,
I love that this is so insistent. A man named Jonathan Silvestri. Just a man named Jonathan.
Very intentional about adultifying him, because he is an adult and not a child victim.
Well, and it really highlights like what that name does to Johnny.
It's no secret Johnny has accused you of some very serious allegations. We're going to get to specifics, but I do want to start just in general right now.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree with that characterization of you?
No, not at all. It's just a heavy thing to throw out. I know my intent. I know who I am. I've made mistakes, but I also don't know if I believe that he even thinks that.
That he thinks
that I'm those things. Yeah.
Do you feel like he's just making these claims, not believing them, and that they're lies, or what do you mean by that?
No, I think he takes fragments of truth that are real, and he amplifies them almost identically to how Colleen did the same thing behind the scenes, where she would take little fragments of truth. And this is what I've seen with receipts. Little fragments of truth, and then expand on them to make them massive.
And it's so telling that the way he describes Johnny is so different from how he's talked about everything else that he's taking accountability for, which again could be intentional because he's aware that he's being perceived here.
Right.
But to just totally be like, no, Johnny is like Colleen, in that they both take little pieces of truth and stretch them into a whole other story. Like that is so strikingly different from the way he's taking accountability for these other things.
Mm-hmm.
Are you tired of feeling unsafe online? Do you want to learn how to protect yourself from cyberbullying, doxing, and other forms of online harassment? Then look no further than Doxxed the Podcast. Visit the website doxxedthepodcast.com to sign up for the Doxxed free ebook full of helpful tips and resources for online safety. Plus, when you sign up, you'll receive the weekly newsletter with the latest updates on upcoming content. There are many ways to connect with Doxxed, including Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Discord. Have a story to share or feedback to give? Use the contact form on the site to reach out or leave a voice message to be featured on the show. And for exclusive content, subscribe to the Doxxed Supercast to gain access to the private podcast feed with member-only exclusives. Take control of your online safety and join the Doxxed community today.
He's referred to that in an interview with me as you selling him a fantasy, and he used that word quite a number of times. Also, this fantasy of being kind of the bigger brother to him, and you're going to take him under his wing and whatnot. And that's something that he's characterized quite often. Do you agree with that? Were you making those promises? Was there a fantasy?
To me, there was nothing misleading about what I was saying. There was nothing inauthentic about what I was saying. Everything I said to him about those things, I meant those things. When I said, oh, you're like a little bro, and I'm a big bro, I meant that. I grew up in a culture where I had older people in a youth group, like a big Christian upbringing. I had older people in their 20s as mentors, and it was very normal for me because my father and I, we were on such bad terms, and he was incredibly abusive. I needed somebody, and I had it with the church people. So when I saw Johnny express to me, I have nobody, how did you make it out of high school? I don't have any friends. My heart went out to him. And so.
Okay, to me, this is the key to this character. He brings up that he had mentors in church. It's totally a church thing. Nobody ever taught anybody in church how to be good boundaries mentor.
Right.
And that is the problem. He sounds like he had some difficulty with his family. He found comfort in those relationships in his church. The boundaries have never been taught in those kinds of dynamics. And it didn't transfer well.
Right.
But you, instead of just giving him your autograph, you also gave him your phone number.
Mm-hmm. I sure did.
Why did you do this? Why did you give him your number?
Same reason why my mentors growing up had my number. And I was introduced to that idea as like, there are boundaries. You don't
like right there, she asked, why did you give Johnny your number? And he says, the same reason the mentors in my youth group had my number. And that makes complete sense to me. And it's not right. Like, I think there should be a lot more. Just hopefully churches do that better now. I have no idea.
I mean, boundaries aren't really a thing in churches. Historically, boundaries are just not taught in churches, and they're specifically not taught to the men folk in the church.
No, they're not. Not at all. So you could just see exactly where this comes from, which doesn't make it right, but just wow. I've never seen anyone like talk about it like this. Okay.
Within the same time frame, though, a few days later, per what Johnny told me in an interview, he said he received a birthday gift from his family, which was a video montage of a bunch of family, friends, and whatnot wishing him a happy birthday. And it included clips of you saying happy birthday to him and Trent Ballinger. On Twitter, Johnny has characterized your video clip. He's clipped it out, he's put it on Twitter, and he's characterized it as very creepy, a creepy act.
What's up, Johnny? Happy birthday, man. Today's a big day for you. Happy birthday, man. I believe in you. I'm proud of you, and I cannot wait to see what the future holds for Mr. Silvestri. To Johnny. What the future holds for Johnny.
However, in my interview with him, he told me that, and I don't think he's shared this publicly anywhere, he told me that his family hounded you to make that video.
And then even more confusing is that video you see of him wishing me a happy birthday. They told me now that they had asked him if he would do it, and he said, yes, absolutely. And then they had to hound him and be like, dude, you said you'd make the video. Like, come on. Like, you're the only person we're waiting on. You're not Beyonce. Get on your phone and just say, hey, Johnny, happy birthday. It doesn't have to be anything extravagant. You said you'd do it.
I just want to stop on that for a second, too, because that whole happy birthday video is really weird. I feel like there was like a high level of pressure on Josh to make a happy birthday video.
Mm-hmm. It seemed a little forced.
Seems creepy as fuck, but also it seems like Johnny was like hanging on this every interaction at the time, even to the point that his family was pushing for it.
Yeah. I wouldn't, even in that video, I wouldn't characterize Josh as creepy. Not in that instance. I don't know.
I don't really mean creepy. I mean, I feel like it's creepy that they were, I don't mean that he's creepy. I mean that they were like, why were they like pushing him so much to do this video? And it's, I guess, because Johnny really, really wanted him to, but it's just bad boundaries the whole time. I don't know.
The whole time, yeah.
Johnny himself said, I don't care. Like, to me, it wasn't like some sword through the chest. It was just kind of like another numbing slap in the face. Another like, yeah, you already know this. You know that you were just this thing. You weren't a person who also has feelings and a journey and hopes and dreams and downfalls. Like, cool, you don't like me. I have thought that a lot of people don't like me for a long, long time. And it used to suck my soul dry. And now I have closed myself off. And I only truly look for that kind of validation with only a handful of people, if that. You have been, I don't want to like just kiss up to you, but I don't feel like you're in my corner. I feel like you are, you just care about truth and finding what that truth is and presenting that truth. But I feel like I have never experienced that. Presenting the truth has changed a lot for me. It's one of those things that I just never thought it would happen. So thank you for being the only person in this whole shenanigan that like made me feel like I was worth a couple of cents, you know, like I really appreciate it.
Well, you know, as I've told you, we just feel like in order to have an accurate story, the responsible thing is to hear from as many of the people involved as possible if they want to speak.
I don't want to skew how you're going to edit this or what you're going to show.
You can't, so don't worry about that. And also, you know that I will grill you. You know, the truth has a way of showing itself as long as you are willing to take accountability.
I just love again how he thanks her for that. And like she really does provide the space for like whatever the actual truth is to come out. And it's so much more beautiful than you can contrive. You cannot make this story up.
Right. She's a very responsible documentarian. And it's nice to hear her say, in order to put out an accurate story, you have to talk to as many people involved as possible, because that's what someone with integrity does.
Yeah. And check the stories for consistency. And just like leave emotional space. Like I feel like she's entirely validating these people's experiences, and it's just like amazing to watch. Okay.
There was no ill will. I never had ill will towards him. And I'm really trying my best now to not let my ego get in the way and say things I'll regret, because if you look at the things he says to me now, or not to me, he blocked me because I kept apologizing to him. And he goes on to berate me daily on lives, on tweets directed at me, and then tells me, get my name out of your mouth, Josh. Yet all he does is drag me through the mud and embellish every single thing he can. The way
And that's something I'm also familiar with. Josh says all Johnny does is drag his name through the mud, while at the same time saying, get your name out of my mouth. Or out of your mouth.
Well, that all too well.
Yeah. Smear campaigned. Hate crimed. Not actually hate crimed, but smear campaign.
I want to echo some of the sentiments that I've had throughout covering this story over the last 3 months, which is my belief that the Colleen Ballinger universe and the actions of a few have had widespread, lasting, negative effects on so many people, almost too many to count at this point. When I first pitched this story to my team, the three of us set out with one singular goal here: to get to the bottom of this story, figure out the pain it has caused so many, find the truth, and try to present that truth in hopes that maybe we can start to have healthier conversations around these topics, so that hopefully in time, everyone involved can find healing and the support that they need. I never imagined that the story would pan out the way that it did. I never imagined that halfway through this, I would even be pulled in. Covering this story has been one of the most mentally, emotionally, and physically draining experiences I have ever had, and that goes for my team as well. The gaslighting, the manipulation, the uncertainty of who we could and who we couldn't trust with information as our investigation went deeper and deeper became almost overwhelming. And even with that in mind, my experience here, my team's experience, still pales in comparison to the experiences of those who I always want to keep front and center: Adam, Becky, Oliver, Ella, Bella, Alex, Soph, April, and all of the anonymous witnesses who have come forward privately and publicly. They have experienced a level of hurt, exhaustion, confusion, empowerment, vulnerability, and bravery that I can only try to comprehend. And through it all, they remained steadfast in their truths, no matter what the world did or didn't say, even in the face of Colleen Ballinger denying them the accountability that they asked for. And the fact of the matter is, more information could come out about Colleen or Corey or John or Josh or anyone directly involved in this story. And if it does, my team and I will be there to analyze it. But for the time being, Joshua came here, like many others. He shared his story, his pain, his participation in causing pain, and ultimately his hopes for everyone involved and the protection of future generations. And while it's not my place to accept his words on behalf of the others, I do hope at the very least, when all is said and done, as we refocus back on everyone I listed, that it might bring everyone maybe just one step closer to true healing when the time is right for them. So thank you all for watching, for giving me the space to share this story. Be good to each other, hold each other up, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.
All right, that is hella long, but that's that.
That was a lot. 3.5 hours.
That was a lot. I'm so exhausted now, but also it was, I don't know, something I think was definitely important to follow up on, because this entire Colleen Ballinger situation too just has everything to do with everything we experienced and everything that a lot of people experience, people that are going through smear campaigns, people that have toxic followings, and it's such like a drama of people. And
Yeah.
so thankful to SWOOP for this content.
She did a really, really good, really thorough job of all of this. She handled it so well.
Yeah, I cannot wait to see what she does next with her career.
It's weird to think that Colleen Ballinger got a whole Netflix show and SWOOP doesn't have one. That's crazy.
Maybe not yet. Maybe not yet. Yeah. But this is just, I don't know. I just think this is so powerful. And I really hope Josh gets some, I mean, Josh seems like he's done some serious healing. So I hope that that continues for him and his wife and his loved ones.
I really appreciate what he had to say about encouraging people to find validation within and not just seek social media influencers and celebrities for that, because you are not their family, you are not their best friend. And he kind of said without saying, you know, parasocial relationships aren't really the way, especially if you're a kid. Like, watch what your kids are doing.
Yeah. This is definitely a story about shallowness of parasocial relationships too.
Mm-hmm. And how toxic they can become when you think that by taking certain actions on behalf of a celebrity that you're fond of, that you're going to somehow win their favor. And in the case of Colleen Ballinger, at one point, maybe that was true for a handful of people. And so everyone that wants to be close to her thinks that they have a chance, which makes it horrible for victims of Colleen.
Yeah, and that book, The Wave, the more I think about it, the more that is, it's kind of like young adult reading, but it is really like speaks to this situation the way it's about this school. I guess I just brought it up earlier in the episode, but that was also like several hours ago. But Todd Strasser is the author, and it's like all about this social experiment where they try to make the kids turn into Nazis basically in the school, and it like they're not literal Nazis, but they just start behaving like Nazis, and it doesn't take very much, and it's kind of like reminiscent of the Stanford experiment too. And it's very easy to slip into normalizing and justifying just terrible behavior. So anyway, it's interesting how that plays out here.
Yeah, I'm glad we did this follow-up. This is going to be a beast to edit, and I don't even know how to go about editing this one.
Yeah, as we were doing it, I was like, there's no way we're going to get this done like by tomorrow. So I think we should just put it out for next week.
Thank you for listening. Find additional content at doxxedthepodcast.com.